Hey guys, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. No more empty pockets. Once again, it's a little bit hard not to say fulfill the game of life. Well, so we are 3 days away from getting on the plane to come back to the United States, and I wanted to really get this video kind of laid down so maybe I can actually get on the plane and finish editing this up so I can publish it. But my goal actually is to finish 2 videos, and the first one is Bitcoin. Not just crypto in general, but Bitcoin specifically and Ethereum. And the second one is stable coins, because there is a really time sensitive opportunity on stable coins that you need to know about quickly to take advantage of. But today I want to start with Bitcoin. So I'm sitting here with the Red Ruby port wine, and I will have to say this stuff is really good. I don't usually like dark red wines. I don't really like the bitter. I don't like the dryness and the coating of the tongue. And this stuff has the deep flavor of red wine, but without kind of the dryness and the coating. It is fantastic wine. But anyway, a little bit more to why we're here. I'm actually really excited because I think of the things that are most actionable for anyone who watches these videos, this is the first step to beginning to become financially independent as quickly as possible. Now, in the last video I showed you what my total return has been and what the 4 main asset categories are that I invest in, and by far and away crypto was 220% in 10 months, which is phenomenal. But in order to walk you through why I think this is still the right thing to do, and why if you were my children I'd give you the same investment opinion, because investment advice is not allowed. Once again, this is my opinion. So if you've been around me long enough, you know it's hard for me to just say things without telling stories, and there is a fantastic story here that ties to a bit of my personal character that I'm actually kind of proud to be able to walk through. But more importantly, it has everything you need to know. Now, this story for me really starts way back, maybe as early as 2015 or so. And just being a gamer with a gaming rig, I was aware of mining for Bitcoin. You know, you don't exist as a gamer without being aware of it many years ago. But it was something I never really considered investing in. I didn't know anything about it. And I was heavily into the stock market, and I was working for a living, so it's not like I had a lot of time to learn all this stuff. So as time moved forward, I did become much more interested in Bitcoin. However, as time moved forward, it was somewhere around middle of 2019 where certain circumstances were coming together that finally encouraged me enough to say, I'm going to invest in this. I can see a future in it. But telling that story actually starts back with, oddly enough, the inflation videos. I spent all the time putting the inflation videos together for you guys in a specific order so you could actually hear this story and the way that it developed. Beginning somewhere in 2019 was my first exposure to monetary theory, my first exposure to inflation. I told you in the video, I started seeing inflation for myself, and I just got curious. Why does inflation happen, and why is it moving this fast? Well, it was the exploration of understanding inflation that led me to the Federal Reserve, the money printing, the devaluation of the dollar, and all the things I cover in that video. And just as fate would have it, I began to investigate Bitcoin, and lo and behold, if the two don't marry into such a business case that the moment I understood it was the moment I said, this is the future, I truly believe it, and I'm going to get in and I want to start investing. Now, hopefully, once again, I'm going to encourage you to understand this truly and how it works. I do believe you should watch the inflation videos. However, it's not so critical that you watch the inflation videos, because I'm going to tell you why in the business case, and you can just trust me is the way I say it. But if you want to know how the mechanism actually works, again, go watch the videos. They're an investment in your time, your knowledge, and your own future, and you should invest in your future whenever you can. Now, just as I mentioned, It was actually pretty much coincidental that I began down the inflation path, and then I started tying into Bitcoin. I watched a few critical videos. I assume may have read articles. I honestly can't picture it, how it all happened, because it just happened over so much time and so much information to kind of weave the tapestry of Bitcoin kind of before my own eyes. So at the end of it, it's hanging there. I knew what I wanted to do, and I began down that path. As I headed down that path, it did become clear to me that although Bitcoin was kind of a buzzword back then, and nerds knew about it, and some people were becoming millionaires off of it, but it also just plummeted at times, and the price movement was significant. A couple of things became really clear to me. Number one is it's risky. It was a risky investment, and I knew that it couldn't be the fundamental money that I needed to live to invest in. It needed to be extra money that I could stand to lose. So I encourage you to listen to that when you think about investing. Just know if the money you're investing you could stand to lose. But the second piece to that is, once I understood the business case, and once I understood what the long-term potential was, there was no doubt for me that the risk was going to, by a long shot, probably be outweighed by the rewards. Because it became my belief, after linking the two together, taking the puzzle pieces and watching them snap together, it became my belief that, and I still hold this belief, a year and a half later, almost everything I pictured back then is exactly what's happening, which only makes me more committed to Bitcoin and what its future is going to bring to the world, to the people of the world. But as an investor as well, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I truly believe that. I came to the quick conclusion that the reward was worth the risk, and I invested a significant amount of money in Bitcoin. Now, for someone to actually say, almost everything I thought a year and a half ago is exactly what's happening, that's the kind of thing you hear when people make stuff up. It's usually not true, and it's just an exaggeration, and they only want to focus on the positives and not the negatives. But right now, knock on wood, I can really claim that almost everything I thought a year and a half ago with Bitcoin is exactly what's happened over the last year and a half. And the good news is I don't actually just have to make that claim, because as life would have it, as the beautiful timing of life just kind of married everything together for me, a little bit of the story is this was all about the time when I decided to invest in Bitcoin that I became aware that I could actually retire. I've made videos on that back on the original channel. I'd encourage you to kind of walk through once I realized what the magic number was and whether or not I could generate that much cash every month to live the lifestyle I wanted. So I'd already come to the conclusion, hey, I think I can retire. So Bitcoin was really a secondary thing going on at the same time. But it created this circumstance for me. As the time moved forward and I knew I was going to retire, and then I knew I was going to announce that at work, I decided that what's best, and if you know me personally, you know that my concern for other people's prosperity is sincere and it's real. I have absolutely no ulterior motivation in which to share this information other than there's plenty to go around in this world, and you just have to teach people how to take advantage of it. So as that retirement day neared, I actually went through this level of effort. What I'm going to show you today, and I'm going to walk you through, is an email that I wrote to about 100 people, and I did it in two phases. One was people that I worked with in the company that I was in, and then I sent it to a lot of friends and family on my personal side. Those people totaled, had to be at least 100 people, and I took the personal care to construct an in-depth email to inform friends and family and co-workers on the potential of Bitcoin. But not just here's my opinion. I took what I consider a significant amount of thought and time to construct this email so people could hear the business case for what the potential is and hopefully encourage them to actually put some money into Bitcoin. You might have noticed the glass of wine gets a little more empty between each little cut here, because I take a little sip and then I resume recording. But anyway, I want to walk you through the email. I don't want to read every single line on it, but in the cases where I kind of make, here's what I think is going to happen, I'm going to pause the screen sharing, and then I want to tell you what has actually happened since this date. To continue to add on what the original thoughts were and what has actually occurred, not just the price of Bitcoin, but understanding the geopolitical, the economic value of Bitcoin and how it's developing and how critical it is that you still understand this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually move into the haves instead of the have-nots. Now first, let me start off with pointing out that I sent this on Friday, February 19th of 2021. So we can come back and kind of look at the prices of Bitcoin and Ethereum and see what's actually happened. If the people that I spoke to at that time that I sent this message to had actually taken action and invested money, where would they be today if they had taken the steps that I had suggested here in with my financial opinion, not my financial advice. So, subject. In my humble opinion, you will want to read this. This is worth your lunch. Trust me. Missing an R in you. Never noticed it till now. Anyway, friends, as I wrap up my career and look to greener pastures, I wanted to share an opportunity that I would not want you to miss. This email will feel like a solicitation if you didn't know me personally, so please look past the feelings of being marketed to, if you're hyper aware of that like I am, and take some time to reflect on the contents of this email. I'm taking the time to type this because I believe it is best for you. I simply have no personal gain for sharing this level of research and information. Now, just like in my previous video, I once again had already developed this hypersensitivity to giving people investment opinions, and this is how I dealt with it then. Is very similar to what I did in the last video. But my standard disclaimer on investing: please understand that no one knows the future and that you could lose money. What I can say is if you do lose money, you can bet that I lost money as well, because I'm telling you exactly what I'm doing, and of course I'm investing to make money, not lose it. So all of the disclaimers are now complete. So where am I going? Well, in my humble opinion, cryptocurrencies are the real future of money, and I don't think even the experts back when I wrote this could even see the scope today. And admittedly, I'm also not an expert, but getting into this early, I believe, is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for significant returns on your investment. Let me say, I strongly suggest that you take what I'm about to say and scrutinize it. Do not just believe it. Find some time to read and watch the latest YouTube posts where these people live this every day. Let them do the heavy lifting, because you have a full-time job, and you reap the rewards if you are listening and taking action. I do feel the need to explain in detail why I feel this way, so you're not just trusting me, and then you're exposed to what I think are significant facts which you should confirm with your own security. You can rationalize your risk versus reward and make informed decisions. Now, before I continue, I want to take a moment to just explain, understand, when people give you financial opinion, everyone has some probability of being right and being wrong. Just as I stated in the previous video, no one is 100% right with their opinions. So when you listen to videos, just like you're listening to me here, or any other friend, or any other consultant, or even the professional people you hire, when you're listening to these people, you should always be saying in the back of your mind, there's only some probability that what he's saying turns out to be accurate. You should always doubt what you're being told. And I believe most of my success actually comes from being able to filter through pieces of information, tying them together, and then drawing my own conclusion. I have simply never really invested by someone saying, buy that and sell that. I basically listen to pieces of information, come up with a plan, and then do that investing myself. And in subsequent videos, I'm going to share a lot of that logic that I use for things. The stock market is really heavy in the thought process, at least for me personally. But you just need to understand, when you listen to me talk, there's some probability I'm wrong. And not only some probability, it's quite likely, if not practically certain, that I will be wrong on a certain number of things. But as I said earlier, the winning is, you got to have more wins than losses. Not that you never have any losses. And as you're going to see in this video from back in February, practically everything I hit on, I was spot on with. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, and I've made bad investments since February. Even in a time where it's hard to lose money these days, right? So understand, just be cautious, right? Use your own brain, teach yourself how to think, and listen to pieces of information. Draw your own conclusions. Back to the email. To help understand cryptocurrencies, let's start with, there are basically two primary coins, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, there are dozens of altcoins, and since this email was created, there are actually thousands, and I believe I read an article the other day, there are 11,000 active altcoins. So it's just exploded, right? As I put, dozens. So it's been a massive explosion in altcoins. And they're all developed for different purposes. And I'm guessing you as well, we simply don't have the time to research all these coins. So I have a few trusted sources that I pull most of my information from. I'll share more on that later, but let me start with what I know, or what I think I know, because the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Now, if you've known me for long enough, you know that's probably my single favorite quote of all time, because it beckons to the fact that once you believe you know an answer, you simply stop thinking about alternative answers. If someone asks you a question that you just knew in your mind was the right answer, from that moment on, you will never explore other alternative ways of thinking. So I think it's a critical thing, but it also allows you to look at yourself, because just as I say here in the email, let me start with what I know, or what I believe I know. And it was important to remain open as information flows in, to understand if this stuff that I thought was true back in February is actually true today. And as you're going to see as we roll through this, the answer to that is almost exclusively yes. Now, let's start with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a fully digital currency. It is created, transacted, and stored electronically. It is essentially a continuous ledger of all transactions ever that used Bitcoins, and not in here, but it's stored on multiple computers at the same time. That's a critical piece to know because of this. It's been in existence since 2008, but until very recently, only really part of an underground culture, if you will. But this is one of the most important comments of this entire email. It has proven unhackable for 13 years in a row. However, when you hear on the news or some type of article flows through and you hear that Bitcoin and the word hack used in the same sentence, it has every single time that type of news has come out, it's because the accounts in which they were held have been hacked. And that's another story for a later date. But the actual coin of Bitcoin has never been hacked in 13 years, and that's critical. If it were hackable, the moment that someone actually hacked it, it would become irrelevant. And it's one of the few risks that Bitcoin has. And we'll talk about that more in the future. But the bottom line is this: no one's hacked it for 13 years. Anything that's been hacked relative to Bitcoin is only about the accounts where people hold their Bitcoin. It is electronically mined for, which is another story for another date if you really want to know about mining. It has a true maximum coins of 21 million, and it's dictated by the algorithm. Now, that, if you watch those inflation videos, that one line should have absolutely triggered why Bitcoin is Bitcoin. And I want to go ahead and read the subnote that I had because I was so engrossed in monetary theory at the time. For monetary theory, this is a critical point and is the opposite of endless cash printing for the Federal Reserve and other national central banks around the globe, which devalues our currency and creates inflation, which is another story for another day. But let me pause for a minute and let me look at you eye to eye as you watch this. Bitcoin is almost certain to become the new gold standard. This is the business case. This will move monetary theory back out of the situation where it steals from the poor in order to give to the rich. All the stuff that I put in those videos, this is the solution for that. And if you're thinking, you're probably connecting wires that aren't real. If you want to investigate this, you just go put somewhere in Google, Bitcoin becoming the reserve currency of the world, and you'll see endless opinions and articles. One just the other day in a video I'm watching is Hillary Clinton comes out and says Bitcoin could become the global world reserve currency. And I have spent the last few months trying to understand if that happens, what's going to happen. That's another video for another day, and I frankly still have to get more educated on. I watched an 1.5-hour video today that kept putting puzzle pieces together for me. But the case for Bitcoin is simply this. Bitcoin will force the world to return to the gold standard, and when it happens, if you're holding that coin, if you're holding that Bitcoin, the value of it will just continue to rise exponentially. It really is this world-changing, brand new idea in which money was turned digital, and when it happened, it pulled all of the central bank's power away from printing money, creating inflation, and it's coming. It's just simply coming. Now, I watched the video today. I know it's a side note, but again, this is almost a year later. And the guy went through, he believes what's likely to happen is, if you've watched this so far in the last 9 or 10 months, China has created their own cryptocurrency. The United States is working on a Federal Reserve cryptocurrency. And his belief was, he believes the two political powers of China and the United States and Bitcoin will basically be battling for the reserve currency of the world, because there's a significant amount of power if everyone uses your currency to make trades. But here's what is super interesting about that is the US dollar will have its own power and it'll have its allies, and then China will have its own cryptocurrency and it'll have its allies. And what Bitcoin does is no one can own it. There is no one country that owns it all. So any country who chooses to trade in Bitcoin will have the freedom to trade in Bitcoin. And here's what's the most powerful argument, right? It cannot be shut down by any one country. And as a matter of fact, since this email was written, what has happened is mining for Bitcoin, the biggest nation that was mining for Bitcoin was China. And lots of conversation about how much energy it takes. Don't want to get into that. But I do want to tell you this. China finally said, we're outlawing Bitcoin. We're completely outlawing Bitcoin. You can't buy it if you're a Chinese citizen. So what happens when there's something that's global? Anyway, the second largest economic power in the world, soon to be the first, says, I don't want Bitcoin. Well, do you think that really affected Bitcoin and the rate at which it's being mined at? And the value of the Bitcoin? And the answer is no, it didn't. As a matter of fact, practically every bit of that Bitcoin mining equipment went on the used market, and now the United States is the global leader in Bitcoin mining. So one country trying to banning it, only pushed it over to the United States, people are on it and running just as fast as they can. So anyway, I got a little bit sidetracked. Let me come back to the email. Because it's internet-wide, no one government can shut it down, though it could be outlawed in your country. And I just gave you the practical experience of what has actually happened in China where they shut it down. So My comment here back in February was spot on. I couldn't predict which countries would and wouldn't, but the other side to that, interestingly, is there are now 2 countries, and El Salvador is one of them, that made it a legal currency and is actually building their economy on it. So again, the United States will have its own currency, potentially. China will have its own currency, and all of the other countries around the world get to choose what they're going to do, and some have already adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. And this decentralized finance, which means no one owns it, unlike national central banks owning the currency, such as the US dollar, as the Federal Reserve note. On to Ethereum. So what is Ethereum? Well, at that time, I'm less familiar, but there's a couple of interesting facts that made it a significant draw for me to invest in. Like Bitcoin, it's mined and it's electronic and it's internet-wide, which means it can't be shut down globally. However, instead of being a ledger, it is a continuous list of contracts. And at the time, I didn't know much more than that, and frankly, I don't know significantly more than that as well, because all I needed to know was this point number 3 to entice me to invest in it. Here's the kicker that makes it very important. The majority of altcoins are based on the Ethereum network. And in my opinion, that almost ensured longevity and survival of Ethereum. So I didn't have to know all the technical side of how Ethereum worked, but I know that it is a network, and I know all these other thousands, tens of thousands now of altcoins that are in existence are actually based on the Ethereum network. Many of the coins now, the challenge now is the Ethereum network can't deal with the number of transactions, so they're building second layers into the network, they're building third layers into the network to speed all of these things up. But that only tells you, as all of this work goes on underneath with all these coins, and then a second layer of networks being built to speed this network up, this network's not going anywhere. It's simply not going to go anywhere. Now, what does that mean 10 years down the road? I'm not sure. But I'll tell you this, in the last almost year since I sent this email, none of that has changed, and it's actually accelerated. So the Ethereum network, just like Bitcoin, that has a future in monetary theory, Ethereum has a future in the smart contracts that are going on, and all of the coins and the reasons for these coins that anybody can come up with is built on this network. So it's not going anywhere, and the only question is, well, what kind of value is that going to change in the long run, right? Now, just on to a couple of other quick points. Altcoins, it's some critical information here, and I want to cover this in another video, but I will say this. Altcoins are 100 times more risky than Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you should be really well educated or find someone you trust implicitly to choose altcoins, because the chances of you making money are just as high as the chances of you losing money. So you should be very cautious when you talk about altcoins, and it's another topic for another date. This video is really to understand why you would buy Bitcoin and why you would buy Ethereum. So let me summarize all that with just these few points that I put in the email. Bitcoin has been around for 13 years, and you're still getting in early if you get in today, believe it or not. Only 4% of the global population actually has purchased Bitcoin, from what I heard in the video. 4%. After 12 years, you can consider it a live proof of concept. It's proven to be there, it's proven to be stable, it's proven to be unhackable, and just as the business case that I've laid out for you, if you have questions, you really want to walk through it, it will absolutely, for the first time in recorded history, have an opportunity to return the world to the gold standard and break the system that basically is designed to rob from the poor to give to the rich. So, what's the risk? Well, just as I put in this email, the real risk to Bitcoin is how do governments deal with it? Because you trust me, the Federal Reserve is not sitting in a room not talking about this. They know the risk of Bitcoin, and what are they going to do about it? How will they deal with it? I don't believe truly they can't stop it, because every country in the world can transact it and they can't stop it. And you have to understand that the global elites aren't going to enjoy this. But I got to add a few things that I believe made the case for me back then, and I believe will make the case for you, that Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two things that you most likely put your money in today. Up until the last year or so, almost all Bitcoin has been individual investors and a few whales. The people got in early and own a ton of it and didn't put much money in it, and they run the market. So what's happened in the last several months that's opening the floodgates? And here, if you want to mark something on this video to share with people, this is the most important thing that's happened or happened back in February. By my view and my primary sources, these points are huge, paramount, and gargantuan. They're really that important to understand. Back in 2020, major hedge funds began publicly investing in Bitcoin. This was the first major players trusting the validity of the future of Bitcoin. And what I'm trying to say here is, once an official organization has began investing in it, your risk as an individual investor declines significantly. And I'm going to explain to you why that's the case. As mentioned previously, governments are making their own digital currencies. This was back in February, and it's already happened now in China. Large, more conservative investment firms such as Fidelity announced support for Bitcoin and are working on a mechanism to allow investors to trade it. Just as in the last few weeks, several significant U.S. banks have publicly invested in Bitcoin. There were articles coming out. They were admitting that the banks themselves are actually investing in Bitcoin. And as a matter of fact, just the week that I sent the email, the oldest bank in the United States made public their intention to invest in Bitcoin. So what you start saying to yourself is, well, if the bankers are getting into it and the hedge funds are getting into it, it must be safe enough for them to take the risk, so why should I not take the risk? But here's where it all changed. The door slammed. I said, this is important enough and probably reduces risk enough to tell any and everybody, and here it is. There was a conference the first week of February in Miami, in which the large investment firms held a conference with almost 8,000 U.S. corporations in attendance to create the roadmap for massive corporate investments. They actually had 8,000 corporations show up in Miami, Florida, and there was the investment firms showing them the roadmap for how to invest in Bitcoin. Well, so as I say here in point 6, because governments are the masters of what is legal, and the United States has some special considerations. So, the US dollar is the reserve currency of most of the world. The US benefits from this reserve currency status by maintaining demand for our dollar, helping maintain relative strength versus currencies such as the euro. The visible future for Bitcoin is it is reasonable to see Bitcoin become the global currency, or at least reduce the demand for the US dollar. The government will be influenced to highly regulate it, and that was the risk for me. Once you could simply see that this would challenge the US dollar, it was reasonable to be really concerned of what the United States government would actually do, and whether or not as a United States citizen you could even trade it, or whether they could outlaw it, such as what China did. Well, just as an FYI, it's considered similar to a stock, and it's taxed as capital gains. But here's the winning thought. This closes the door, in my opinion, and removed practically all risk for United States citizens, and probably most of Europe, but definitely United States citizens. And this was it for me. This is actually what caused me to send this email out to friends and family and people that I respected and hoped the best for. In the United States, and by the way, it's hard to tell this without sounding a bit political, but it is what it is. This is how the world really works. In the United States, corporations run the government, which, by the way, I find disgusting, and I'll leave all of that out. But if you want to pause the screen, you can read my opinions on the way that actually works. But here's what's going to happen in the United States, as I said back in February, and right now it looks like I was spot on. Once U.S. corporations flood into Bitcoin, the likelihood of the U.S. government outlawing it is basically eliminated. That's my opinion, as I said, but not a fact. So let me say that in really clear terms. Once the money in the United States has been invested in Bitcoin through the corporations and the banks, any legislator that wants to pass laws to control Bitcoin or potentially outlaw it, even the Federal Reserve, which I understand is a privately owned institution, but the moment that this many companies in the United States get into Bitcoin and put their money in Bitcoin, what would actually happen, lay your money on it, what would actually happen is if someone wanted to outlaw it in the United States, the corporations would buy the lobbyists and absolutely refuse to pass laws that outlawed Bitcoin. It was that moment that I knew almost for certain, without a doubt, that Bitcoin is the future, at least in the United States, and almost for certain all over the world. I don't know if I would have guessed that China would outlaw it, but I can see, you see the currency wars going on between China and the United States, and just as the video I watched this morning, and Bitcoin. But they cannot, the United States government, they're not going to forbid it in the United States. Seems terribly unlikely. If they did start to do it, they would have to figure out how to compensate all these corporations, because if it got outlawed and it were truly non-tradable in the United States, companies would lose billions upon trillions, and the government's simply not going to let that happen. So you can bet they're going to keep Bitcoin as a tradable currency. The bigger question now is, this is coming. This was legitimately 8 months ago, and it's worked exactly as I thought that it was going to back then. So does that make my future opinions more valid? Potentially. And my future opinions are, Bitcoin is still on the path to become the global reserve currency. I do believe the video I watched today has influenced me. I could see it as a reasonable future in which China's currency is competing with the US dollar, which will then be an electronic currency owned by the Federal Reserve. But they won't be able to shut down Bitcoin, and nor will they want to, because the corporations are going to hold too much money in it, and it would crush the economy to do that. So the future of Bitcoin, 90% positive, 97% positive. It has a future in the world, and it's not going to be stopped by any one country. So is it worth the risk still today? And the answer is, for me, absolutely. I truly believe this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Even a year past when I sent this email, it's still a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, Ethereum, completely different monster. I watched a video today where one guy said, I don't see Ethereum lasting truly long term. May be the case, so maybe we need to be aware of competitors. There are competitors to Ethereum as the network, the speed, and the cost to keep that network going. But that's a future consideration. And just FYI, since last year, since I invested, my biggest returns by a long shot have come from Ethereum. I've done really well with Bitcoin, but Ethereum returns have been 4 times what Bitcoin has. So if someone had put their money in Ethereum and Bitcoin, you would have had a fantastic, back when I sent this email, you would have fantastic returns. Now, there was a downtime in between that time, another video, in which people would have seen and experienced anxiety. They might not have been willing to hold it, and all those things that come with actually trading and investing. But the bottom line is this is the future. I truly believe it. I've given you the business case for it, and I've given you a logical, highly probable reason that the United States government will never shut it down. They might try to regulate it in some creative ways, but they're not going to try to outlaw it in the United States unless they can compensate all these companies all these billions of dollars. So I know that's a repetitive comment, but it's important to understand this is actually what's coming. Now look, once again, I start off with, I want to make these videos short and succinct, but it's a little bit hard to be convincing with just bullet points, 1, 2, 3, 4, and be done. There's an emotion behind this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I don't know how to explain that the probabilities Nothing is for certain, but the probabilities of making money while investing on Bitcoin and Ethereum, if you hold it long term, are extremely high. And not just 5% or 7% returns, they're still in the double digits. I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to say guaranteed. Double digit returns, most likely, your biggest investment opportunity, your biggest secure investment opportunity that still exists, in my opinion. So I hope this video was informative. I hope you understand better not only what Bitcoin and Ethereum are, but you understand the basic business case for why they're actually secure investments and not highly risky investments, and you understand how it's actually going to fit likely in the future of mankind. This is a really significant thought process. This is not made up stuff that you're not sure how things are going to go. It's almost for certain 2 countries have already accepted it as legal tender, and it's almost certain that there will be many, many others. Getting your feet wet and owning Bitcoin and Ethereum, I really strongly suggest that you consider. So, final thoughts on this. If you were my son or my daughter or my actual children, this is what I would say today. You open an account in either Voyager or Crypto.com, and it's not so important right now, but in the next video you will understand why I'm telling you, you pick one of those two, if not both of them. You open an account and you transfer what money you can in to invest in crypto, and I would encourage you, my investment opinion is, and you'll never know for sure what's the exact right thing to do, but you take your money, you split it in half, and you invest half of it in Ethereum, and you invest half of it in Bitcoin. Lots of considerations on when you make that transaction, and whether it's high and whether it's low. But if you're investing in the long term, all I can say is you do it sooner rather than later. But as of December 8th right now, the market is still down. So if you could do it in the next 2 days, you're likely buying in at a lower point, and you'll get some really quick gains out of it. No guarantees. That's my current logic. There's a probability that my logic may be wrong. So don't beat me up if it is wrong and it goes down even more in the next few days. But understand this. I personally truly believe with my own investments, because this is what I'm doing, that the future of monetary theory is tied directly to Bitcoin. And if all altcoins are, almost all altcoins are built on the Ethereum network, it's a no-lose bet. Get your money in those two, make that first investment, quit paying off So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, but I really would encourage you not only to start considering this for yourself, but you need to inform family and friends that if they have money to invest, you can share this channel, you can just give them what you've learned here. I have nothing that I really need to gain out of this to live the rest of my life. I'm telling you this for your benefit, and I would hope that you have people that you care about, that you want to tell them for their benefit. Just always be cautious that people don't bet their entire house on Bitcoin. I think that's unnecessary risk. Though I do hear stories where people do it. They literally have sold their whole houses, they bought Bitcoin, and now they're extremely rich. But that was back at historical gain rates, and the future gain rate won't be as fast as what it has been in the past. But the future of money is tied to Bitcoin. You can lay a high probability bet that it's going to continue to develop over the years, and now you understand why I put all of that inflation together, and understand that when the gold standard was left, this was the first time in history that it can now be replaced by something that cannot be manipulated by any government, because they'll mine 21 million Bitcoin, and it will never be mined again. It cannot be deviated from. And when that goes in place, all of the monetary world will become super clear. And I can't wait to make videos on that, just because it's this fascination of what the future is almost for certain going to look like. And I hope you hang around for those, but that's well into the future. So if you like the video, give me a thumbs up, hit hit the subscribe button, and we'll get back to you with another video as soon as we can. Thank you.